the world we live in feels safe until the moment you wake up and can't move. These are stories of sleep paralysis. Subscribe and hit the like button.
In the evening, I spent a long time moving things around in the nightstand, but I couldn't shake the feeling that the walls in the room were standing at a different angle. This was something you couldn't see or describe. It was just that whenever I turned my head, it seemed like the corner of the room had just breathed out softly. The lamp flickered almost imperceptibly, not sharply, but exactly as glass does when it breathes. I was taking out a receipt from 2015 and suddenly felt it. The ceiling was warmer than it should have been. Not the floor, not the air, not the lamp, but the ceiling itself. I looked up, nothing. It looked completely normal. Then I bent down to the drawer again, and I smelled metal, as if an old radiator had been unscrewed nearby, or someone had opened a cut and was holding it close to my face. Very faint, but noticeable. I touched the ceiling with my palm. Dry, cold. The smell was gone. I lay down asleep, thinking it was just overwork. But when the ceiling last flashed with a faint red gleam, I was pierced by the feeling of being watched by a stranger. I woke up as if someone had yanked a thread to pull me out of sleep. My body wouldn't move. My eyes opened on their own, and I suddenly realized the silence in the room wasn't moving either, as if time was holding its breath. Then I saw the first thing. Directly above my face, a drop of blood emerged on the ceiling. It wasn't falling. It was growing, pulsating, as if someone inside was pushing it out with a heartbeat. Boom, boom, boom. It wasn't pulsating in time with my heart. It was creating its own rhythm. The neighboring drop was torn apart by a crack. It began to bleed too. And then the sound came, "Can you hear me?" The voice didn't come from the ceiling or from a great depth. It came through the blood, as if through a liquid. I felt the hair on my arms trying to stand up, but my body wouldn't obey. The drops connected with thin, living threads. They were shaking as if an electric current was passing through them. "I'm above you. I've been watching every night." The voice was broken, muffled, like speaking through blood-soaked cloth. "You are here. You are lying still. Good." A pattern was drawn on the ceiling. If you looked at it from below, it resembled the vascular map of a human head, but distorted, warped, redrawn by something that had only seen human blood but didn't understand it correctly. The main drop detached from the ceiling and hung in the air like a small ball of living fluid. It descended lower, even lower. I felt the warm breath of the blood. It didn't make sense, but I felt it. Your pulse, you're keeping it. Inside yourself, give me one. The drop touched my skin between my eyebrows. Lightly, like a tongue or a tiny finger. I felt it listening, searching for the pulse, the rhythm, the entrance. The ceiling cracked again. Thin red threads, resembling capillaries, began to descend from it. They stroked my face, neck, chest, not painfully, but gently, like a medic who doesn't want to startle a patient. Here, right here, close, superficial, the memory is still in me. One thread found my temple. It began to press, to rub, searching for the spot where the blood flows most treacherously close to the surface. "Here is your access. Allow me to enter." I felt something hot and sticky slowly inching its way under my skin. The pressure grew, my heart leaped, and the entity whispered, "I want to return life through you." All the threads suddenly tightened like strings. The drop on my forehead pulsed faster. The ceiling breathed, as if a creature was hiding there, taking deep, heavy breaths in my own rhythm. "A little more. Give me one beat, just one." One of the threads struck my temple sharply. I felt the blood pressing into me, exactly in the place where the heart beats. The drop slid along the furrow of my skin. One more millimeter and it would have entered. I felt it physically. The paralysis suddenly vanished, like a window shattering. I threw my head back. The threads of blood snapped, splattered onto the ceiling, and disappeared as if absorbed by the plaster. I sat up in bed, breathing heavily. The ceiling was clean, completely. But on my temple, where the creature had sought entry, a dark spot remained, as if from a thin needle. I ran my finger over it, and the drop, seriously, I heard it, faintly said, "Your rhythm found." In the evening, I felt a strange nervous tension, although nothing had happened. The entire day had been smooth, mundane, even overly correct. And that was precisely what frightened me. Everything was quiet, and that silence felt alien. I walked around the room as if searching for something, though I didn't know what it was. Before bed, I opened the closet for the second time that evening. The sweaters were neatly folded, the shirts hanging as always. But something gave me the feeling that someone had been standing there while I was away, as if the air inside the closet wasn't the same as in the apartment. I closed the door, walked over to the bed, put down a new pillow, and touched it. It was warm, even though the room was cool. I stared for a long time at the door to the hallway, at the handle, at the lock. I had the urge to check if I had locked it, even though I had already checked. I walked over, it was locked. But as I turned back to the bed, I heard not a sound. The absence of sound, as if someone had pulled everything that was supposed to sound out of the air. I lay down, closed my eyes, and fell asleep instantly. Too quickly. I woke up without transition. My eyes snapped open, my body wouldn't move. Paralysis covered me like a heavy, wet cloak. The room was dark, but the darkness wasn't just an absence of light. It was the presence of something. I was looking directly into the shadow until I realized a man was sitting on the chair, slumped, motionless, his hands placed on his knees so evenly, as if they had been put there by other hands. His clothing could have been anything. Attention wasn't drawn to the shirt, but to what wasn't there. His face. Instead of a face, a large black hole. Deep, bottomless, like a torn piece of reality. I was looking at it, and it was looking at me. The man slowly lifted his head. The shadow around his neck shifted, and the darkness within the void stirred. And then a sound burst from it. Why, oh, you, as if someone were trying to pronounce a word with broken tools. He tried again. Undeniably. The syllables broke, dragged, and hissed. Then he suddenly stopped, and the darkness in his head arched, as if taking a breath. I was looking for. I froze. He continued, pronouncing the words almost correctly now. You carry the excess. He stood up. His movements were abnormally smooth, without jerks, without natural pauses, as if he were moving through thick oil. With every step, I heard thump, 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 but these are not steps. It was the sound of something heavy falling against metal walls inside a pipe. He stopped right next to the bed, leaned over. The darkness from his head drew the gaze like a magnet. I wanted to turn away, but my eyes wouldn't obey. And then he spoke again. I see here. His hand lifted and hovered over my chest. That which weighs on you and belongs to me. His fingers touched my ribs. Cold, dry. I felt their pressure pass through my skin and touch what was beating inside. Take me into yourself, or I will take you into myself. The fingers slowly, not physically, but in some other way, began to pass deeper. Not breaking, not cutting, but seeming to separate the layers of the body from one another. The darkness began to suck in the air. I could hear my own breath sliding into his void. He whispered, right here, your fear is not yours. The pressure rose to my throat. I couldn't swallow. He dropped lower. Here, the anger. Here, the shame. Here, what you hide. And then he said the most terrifying thing. I came to cleanse you of you. The darkness compressed my rib cage. It seemed to be taking a part of me, not physical, but deeper. I suddenly felt like I was starting to forget my own name. He leaned closer, the hole almost touching my cheek. Allow me to enter. I gathered all the remaining will and made an internal lurch. Sharp, unpleasant, like an electric shock. The paralysis wavered but didn't break. The man leaned even closer, as if sensing my resistance. Don't, I have not taken yours. The darkness rustled. I felt something touch my shadow on the floor and begin to pull it upward into his head. I almost passed out, and only on the third lurch did my body obediently twitch. The paralysis broke. I fell out of bed onto the floor. Loudly, painfully. The room was empty, completely empty. I got up, breathing heavily, and turned on the light. Everything was normal. And then I saw the pillow. Soft, new, white. But in the middle there was a deep, dark indentation, and from its edges trickled a thin black soot, as if after the touch of red-hot metal. And from that streak, a sound barely emerged. I am not finished yet. In the evening, I came home with the feeling that the whole day had been somewhat foreign. Not bad, not good, just something that didn't belong to me. I entered the bedroom, tossed my keys onto the nightstand, and put the bag with the new pillow next to the bed. I had been wanting to replace the old one for a long time. It had lost its shape, becoming thin as a towel. But when I took the new pillow out of its packaging and placed it on the bed, a strange feeling suddenly hit me. It was as if I had already seen this pillow here, as if it had always been lying in this exact spot. I even ran my hand over the fabric, checking if the sensation was familiar. Cool, smooth casing, the same shape, the same feeling of a light, springy layer inside. I shook my head. I must just be tired. I turned on some quiet music on my phone, set the kettle, and made myself tea. The evening was calm, too calm. Even the music sounded somewhat muffled, as if the room had become wider and emptier. I lay down, rested my head on the new pillow, pleasantly cool, just the way I like it. Before falling asleep, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed a silhouette in the window's reflection on the stairwell landing. It was standing motionless, tall, slightly hunched forward. I couldn't make out anything, just a dark figure. I moved closer to the window. The figure didn't move. I decided it was a neighbor, smoking, or just standing there. I went back to bed, lay down, pressed my head into the new pillow. It felt so nicely wrapped around my neck, and then I heard a slight tap on the window, gentle like the touch of a finger. I froze, listened, silence. Must be my imagination, I thought, and closed my eyes. Sleep overtook me sharply, without transition. I woke up as if I'd been lifted from the inside. My eyes opened on their own. I breathed out, but I couldn't take a deep breath in. My arms didn't move. My legs didn't move. Not even my fingers. Paralysis. But this time different. Not just physical. The darkness in the room was thicker than it should have been. It filled the space like smoke. Like water. My eyes adjusted to the darkness, and I saw someone was sitting in the chair by the desk. A man's figure, slumped, hands on his knees, head slightly tilted forward. I blinked. The figure remained. I looked closer, and my heart stopped for a moment. He had no face. Instead of it, a deep black hole. Not a shadow, not a mask, not an absence of light, but an actual hole, inside which darkness seemed to move, like smoke in an inverted jar. He sat completely motionless, then slowly tilted his head. A hum low, drawn out, came out of that void. Not outward, but into me, into my head. You chose the place correctly. I couldn't make a sound, couldn't move. The entity rose from the chair. Its movements were as if delayed by half a second. Every gesture trailed a thin wave of darkness. It walked to the bed, soundlessly, without steps. The darkness beneath it didn't just cast a shadow. It absorbed the light. It bent down. Its bottomless face hovered a few centimeters from mine. I need what you hide. Its hand, long, narrow, cold, stretched toward my chest. Its fingers lightly touched my skin, but I felt a sharp internal jolt, as if something inside me shuddered. There it is. There is your excess emptiness. I didn't understand. It seemed to be listening to my body, my thoughts, my fears through touch. The fingers moved slowly, with perceptible attention, like a doctor palpating an invisible wound. You carry within you more than you can bear. I will take what weighs you down. Its hand sharply changed direction. Now it rested on my forehead. The darkness in the hole intensified. The hum grew stronger. I felt something pulling from my head. Not physically, not thoughts, but fragments of myself that I never wanted to see. Here are the memories you hid. Here is the fear you won't speak. Here is your silence that you are afraid to break. My breathing was labored. I felt panic throughout my body, but the body wouldn't move. And then it raised its second hand and placed it on the new pillow beneath my head. The pillow began to indent, deeper and deeper still, as if someone were grabbing it with their fingers from the inside and pulling it down. You bought it to sleep better, but I came so you would sleep differently. It leaned in close. I will take your shadow. The darkness from the hole expanded toward me, moving like a living fluid. I felt myself starting to fall away. Not my body, my consciousness. And just then, the paralysis cracked like an ice shell. I exhaled sharply and jerked, rolling off the bed onto the floor. The room was empty. The chair empty. The darkness normal. But the pillow, a deep, dark indentation remained in its center. And around the edges, a thin black streak, as if fingers of darkness had touched the fabric. I touched the pillow with my fingers. It was warm, warmer than it should have been, as if someone had been sitting on it just a moment ago. A few seconds ago. In the evening, I decided to replace the calendar page for the new month. The past few days have been hectic, and I realized I hadn't tidied up the apartment in a long time. I wanted at least some sense of control. When I took off the old sheet and attached the new one, I noticed something strange. There were tiny, almost imperceptible dark spots on the wallpaper near the refrigerator, as if moisture was slowly seeping through the paint. I touched them with my fingers. The spot was colder than the rest of the surface. So cold, as if there were a draft behind the wall, though there was another apartment there. I stood and listened. Silence. Fatigue, I decided. I drank tea, turned off the light, and went to the bedroom. The fresh bedding smelled pleasant and familiar. This was reassuring. I lay down, put my hand under my cheek, and listened to the steady clicking of the radiator. Warm, mundane, familiar. And then I heard a very quiet shush, a barely noticeable slide, as if a fingernail had touched the wall next to my ear. I opened my eyes, nothing, closed them again, and sleep pulled me under. I woke up in absolute, cold, motionless darkness. My body stone, my eyes open, no movement at all. Light from the hallway cast a faint blue strip on the wall to the right, and it was there that I saw the first thing. First, a shadow, then a contour, then a distinct palm. It was manifesting from inside the wall, like an imprint someone was pressing from the other side. The fingers slowly stretched out as if kneading the material. A second one appeared nearby, and a third, and a fifth, all of different sizes. Small, like a child's. Large, wider than human hands. Crooked, long, like those of someone who had long forgotten what a hand looked like. The sound multiplied. Shush, shush, shush. The wall was alive. It was breathing. It was moving in waves. I watched, unable to even swallow. The palms weren't just sliding. They were searching, looking for a point. My place. One hand bulged so strongly that the wallpaper curved outward like a drum membrane. Fingers moved beneath the paper, and they pressed in my cheek. Through the thin layer of wallpaper, something alive touched me. Cold, soft, persistent. And then a voice was heard. Not from the room, from the wall. Rough, hissing, worn, as if fingers were speaking, not a mouth. The fingers squeezed the wallpaper, pulling it even closer. The second hand pressed into the blanket near my ribs. The third at the level of my feet. The fourth slid upward and pressed against my shoulder through the fabric. I was surrounded by touches, dozens, and the voices multiplied. Let us in, open up. We remember, are where we are. We want to return. The hands began to break through. The wallpaper stretched so tightly that I could hear the fibers crackling. Thin cracks ran along the palms. One hand pushed its fingers all the way through, one by one, forming a shape as if gripping the edge of the world. The fingers were thin, bony, but they moved as if alive. They reached toward me, gliding through the air centimeters from my skin. The voice got closer, choral muffled. Give us a way out. Your wall is thin, and you are close. The fingers stretched toward my mouth, slowly, as if they wanted to cover it, or stretch it open, or force it to say something. I was trapped. I couldn't breathe normally, couldn't even blink faster. One hand lightly touched my lips. Coldness, stickiness, a slight movement. The touch was absolutely alive. The voice rustled right by my ear. Open the way for us with your breath. The fingers began to pull my lips down, slowly, as if opening a door. And just then, sharply, painfully, the paralysis vanished. I lunged sideways, fell to the floor, and grabbed my mouth. The walls were smooth. No hands. No breakthrough. Only on the wallpaper near my face remained 5 small, even indentations, and each one was warm, as if they had just been touched.